Order! Order!
The ayes to the right, 286. The noes to the left, 344.
The ayes to the right, 286. The noes to the left, 344. So the noes have it, the noes have it. Unlock.
Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay, and that was the vote that took place on Friday, which may be the last gasp of Theresa May's attempt to pass a resolution in Parliament supporting with Brexit move. This one was a motion on withdrawal, which didn't have all kinds of other provisions that would actually lead to Brexit, but she couldn't even win that. Went down more than people thought. Just before the vote, it was expected it might be only a 10-point vote loss, and it turns out to be a 58-vote loss. So order, order, which is my favorite part of watching all of this, that guy yelling order, order. Well, it's anything but order, order. And if you are confused, our North American audience, by what's going on with Brexit, don't worry. I believe our audience in the United Kingdom may not be as confused, but everybody's pretty confused. And if you watch the BBC, the words chaos and confused were in every other sentence. So now joining us to try to make some sense of all this is Leo Panitch. Leo is a professor emeritus and senior scholar at York University in Toronto. He's the co-author with Sam Gindin of the book, The Making of Global Capitalism, The Political Economy of American Empire. Thanks a lot for joining us, Leo.
Hi, Paul. It's fun, isn't it?
It's crazy. I mean, between the elites, the Anglo-American alliance, the governments of both countries are in complete poo-poo, but it seems to me that the Brits are maybe even more chaotic because Brexit's kind of a more fundamental thing than the match going on with Trump.
What you need to know is the Speaker of the House, that remarkable guy, is a former East London taxi driver.
Well, he's got the voice for it. All right, so April 12th. This is the looming date now. It's like less than, 2 weeks away. By April 12th, there has to be something, or they head towards what people are calling a hard no-deal Brexit, which is the UK gets out of the EU with no accommodation at all on what the heck the relationship is going to look like going forward. Something the majority of Parliament has already said they don't want. At any rate, let me just play a couple of other clips with Prime Minister trying to persuade the right wing of her party, although mind you, she's pretty much in the right wing, but not maybe the far right wing. Persuade them that if she threw herself on her sword, that would persuade them to vote for this thing today. Didn't. In fact, today was March 29th, was supposed to be the day that the UK left the EU. That ain't happening. Anyway, here's here's Theresa May right after the vote.
I think it should be a matter of profound regret to every member of this House that once again we have been unable to support leaving the European Union in an orderly fashion. The European Union has been clear that any further extension will need to have a clear purpose and will need to be agreed unanimously by the heads of the other 27 member states ahead of the 12th of April. I fear we are reaching the limits of this process in this House. This House has rejected no deal. It has rejected no Brexit. On Wednesday, it rejected all the variations of the deal on the table. And today, it has rejected approving the withdrawal agreement alone and continuing a process on the future. This government will continue to press the case for the orderly Brexit that the result of the referendum demands.
Okay, so after the Prime Minister spoke, Jeremy Corbyn, the head of the Labour Party, spoke, and here's what he said.
This is now the third time the Prime Minister's deal has been rejected. When he was defeated the first time, the Prime Minister said it's clear this House does not support the deal. Does she now finally accept that the House does not support the deal? Because she seemed to indicate just now that she's going to return to this issue again. On Monday, this House has the chance, and I say to all members, Mr. Speaker, the responsibility to find a majority for a better deal for all the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, the House has been clear. This deal now has to change. There has to be an alternative found. And if the Prime Minister can't accept that, then she must go, not at an indeterminate date in the future, but now, so that we can decide the future of this country through a general election.
So Corbyn calls for Theresa May to go now, not later, a general election. And just to give a little more context before we start talking, Leo, on the weekend there was a big rally, march, about 1 million people calling for a people's vote, which it's not entirely clear because there's some people think a people's vote is another referendum, and some people think a people's vote might be a call for a general election. At any rate, it's 1 million people, and it certainly reflects a big part of people that are fed up with the process and think there should be another vote of some kind. Maybe this all feeds into a general election. So, Leo, might Jeremy Corbyn get what he's calling for, a general election, and might he get what he wishes for, and does he want what he's wishing for?
It could, if this is stretched out long enough for the Tories to pick a new leader, and then they call a general election. I think, of course, it was forced now. He would win it, given May's unpopularity. But who knows if, in fact, they pick a new leader, it's a fresh face. It's hard to believe that Boris Johnson wouldn't divide the Conservative Party. But if they picked someone else, Dominic Raab, a new face, people might very well be motivated to vote for this fresh face. It's dangerous. Look, nevertheless, that said, once Corbyn is able to put forward the essence of the Labour Party program, which is anti-austerity, dealing with inequality, finally returning people to basic services, nationalizing those utilities that people so badly want nationalized, rail, water, etc. It's conceivable that will override this now substanteless. Really, there's no substance to it. Brexit debate. And it's also possible that it'll be clear that what Corbyn's position has been, which is to continue with the customs union and to have a modified single services union, modified so that there's some control over the movement of capital and labor, that might get through too. So, I think what's becoming clearer all the time is that Corbyn's position on this, which is that we're critical of the EU. We'd like to keep a relationship with it that is as close as possible. We'd have to pay a little bit more for some things, maybe even a lot more for some things. But, the hysteria that this has been greeted with is I think, uncalled for. That said, of course, if you can pull this off in a more humane, rational way, you should do so. But I do think that the cliffhanging nature of the discussion sounds somewhat like, what was it called when 2000 came in? And everybody thought that because of the 2KK or something, 2K2, do you remember it? Yeah.
But this is more concrete than that. There's a ton of intertwining commercial relationships that get thrown up in the air. They'll work it out over time.
They get thrown up in the air, but they come down. But you're right. No, it's serious. But the world will not come to a stop.
Well, the world may not come to a stop, but a lot of people might lose their jobs, they might lose their homes, and there's a short-term effect that the workers are going to feel.
No, of course. If there were a massive recession or depression caused by this, it's hard to believe it would be caused in Britain alone. There's lots of things going on right now in terms of the international financial markets and currency markets in particular.
Well, that's actually an important question. If there was a hard Brexit, given how fragile a lot of things are right now, might that be a trigger?
It could. It could also concentrate minds, especially because the City of London is at the center of so much of exchange rate derivative trading around the world. It might concentrate minds. You can be sure that the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England and the European Central Bank and the Bank of International Settlements and the Bank of Canada are on the phone together as we are, watching this very closely and seeing what fires they're going to need to put out.
The Obama administration clearly didn't like Brexit. They wanted the UK to stay in Europe. Where's the Trump administration on this? They seem fairly aligned with a lot of the right-wing parties of Europe who have generally been anti-EU. What role, if any, is the Trump administration playing in this?
Yeah, the Steve Bannons around Trump, Trump himself, the Boltons of this world, side with the Brexiteers, side with Boris Johnson, because of the xenophobic element to this. Not necessarily because they want the European Union to split up or see it as a great threat, although they play that game a little bit too. So they at the beginning were certainly mixing in a little. It didn't do the Remain side any good, actually, when Obama came along and told, during the campaign, and told the British people that they would be at the end of the list in terms of negotiating a trade agreement with the United States. That was seen as, American imperial interference. It didn't do any good at all. I don't think it'll do much good either. I know it won't if Trump were to weigh in on this stuff, and he has remained fairly quiet about it. Although he tweets ever so often, of course, his usual mendacious stuff.
Okay, just finally, the preponderance of the British elites, I know not all, were in the Remain campaign and during the first referendum, but they seem very split. Certainly in terms of the political class, the Tory party is extremely split on this. But why don't the preponderance of British capital have more power in the Conservative Party? Because whenever you hear them interviewed, I listen to Bloomberg Radio in the mornings, and they keep interviewing the head of the British Council of this and these various trade associations, and they seem to hate this Brexit idea, but they seem to have so little power in this process.
Yeah, I think what this goes to show is that those of us on the left who think that capital has a united and clear political strategy worked out is wrong and has always been wrong. Capital is a disorganized, competitive, profit-driven, accumulating beast. It is not a coherent political actor. The British ruling class includes all kinds of landed elements, blue rinse lady Tories, yahoos from the working class, plus the old Colonel Blimp imperial mentality. And I assure you that some of these businessmen you're seeing interviewed are going to their country clubs and are very friendly with those people who represent these attitudes, even as they articulate, yes, this isn't necessarily good for British business. So, to understand the ruling class, of course, you need to understand how it's rooted in capital accumulation in these capitalist societies. But at the same time, as is true, of course, of the working classes around the world, they're made up of all kinds of contradictory aspects of national identity and historical traditions, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what is coming out here in a relatively ugly way, not only in Britain, but around the world.
And does the way the Republican Party has more or less succumbed to and accepted Trump as it being Trump's party, in spite of all the scandal and corruption and everything else, does that encourage those similar forces in the UK?
I'm not sure. I really can't tell the extent to which the derision of Trump, which I think is pretty worldwide, gets in the way of any substantive or coherent message. One has to hope it does.
I'm not talking about the derision. I'm talking about how the sections of the elites that are around the Republican Party, many of whom hated Trump, like the Koch brothers did not support Trump in the election, but they've sure come to terms with him as being president. And now the Koch brothers have all their people, Pompeo and others, all around Trump. I'm actually not talking about the derision. I'm talking about how Trump is sort of surviving and even succeeding in spite of the derision, and how strong he is in the Republican Party.
Yeah, and that's very significant, and it'll get stronger insofar as the Democrats put forward a more socialist candidate, Bernie or somebody like him. They know which side of the bread their butter is. The Koch brothers' link with Trump was established through Pence becoming the vice president. And, of course, it's also taken place through the senators who are in their pockets. And so long as they got their tax cuts and deregulation out of Trump, and so long as you say they have appointments in place in the kinds of departments and agencies that matter to them, not least the energy department, et cetera, they'll leave with Trump. And we need, in that sense, to be very clear that although they still stand around with bated breath to see what Trump might say tomorrow morning, and although they aren't at all happy with the way in which he is throwing sand in the wheels of the value chains of global capitalism, they will live with this, especially insofar as the class divisions that neoliberalism, capitalism's created, throws up socialist alternatives. This is what German bourgeoisie did with a much uglier, more coherent alternative that got thrown up at the beginning of the Great Depression. They lived with it. In the end, they ended up funding it.
You're talking about Hitler.
I'm talking about Hitler or, Mussolini, etc. This is also true of Bolsonaro in Brazil. Big capital didn't want him. He appointed one of theirs as his economics minister, who is still the main liaison with them. But, when they saw what the alternative was, they voted for him. We need to get ready for a world in which capital is prepared to support these kinds of people, with all of the implications that means. And it means we better get our SHIT together.
Yeah, really. All right, thanks for joining us, Leo.
Great to talk to you, Paul.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.